Thank you, everybody. Thank you. How about the microphones? Is that fine? Can everybody hear? Not a soul set of words. That means you're not hearing me. Right? What a pleasure to be here, and what a great introduction these two men gave me. Dan mentioned that it seems like Christmas. Am I Santa Claus? Is that the way you see me? Anyway, I am just delighted, and to have Shirley here with me. Shirley has been chairman of the National Day of Prayer for 25 years, and she just stepped down. Shirley, would you stand? I know that they just greeted you, but I want them to know you. Get acquainted with this great lady. Shirley and I have been married for 56 years, and we think it's going to work. She is a great lady. Well, it's not a perfect marriage. We don't have a perfect marriage because Shirley's not perfect, but we have had an absolutely wonderful time. We fell in love in college, and it's been a great ride. Shirley is like her mother. She's a whole lot like her mother, who was very feisty. She lived to be 97 years of age, and she was that way right to the end. And Shirley is very feisty too, and that's what I love about her. Her mother would just take you on if you didn't say the right thing. And I said to her one day, Alma, why don't you listen to me anymore? That you used to listen to me. I know that because you talked about it. You don't ever mention my program anymore. You don't listen to me anymore. And she said, oh, Jimmy, I've heard everything you got to say. And she walks around the house. She's gone now, but walked around the house with a little transistor radio on her shoulder. She wasn't listening to me. She was listening to Rush Limbaugh. Well, Shirley's a little feisty like that, too. We were on a plane a while back, and there was this console between us, and Shirley ordered tomato juice, and the flight attendant came and put it between us, and I didn't know it was there. So I'm over here, I'm working, I have the computer or something, and I wheeled around and I hit that little bit of tomato juice, and it went over and off and into her lap. And for some reason, I thought that was funny. She was wearing a white suit, and I it's just my quirky personality. I was laughing, and I about half of that tomato juice went in her lap, and I was laughing with my eyes shut. She poured the other half in my lap. And we had a hard time explaining that when we got off the plane, as you can imagine. But we have the same sense of humor and really enjoy each other. But a while back, we were skiing. Shirley and I loved to ski. And we were in Vail, and we'd been together for a whole week. And we had a lot of togetherness. And even though we have a great relationship there, you start to get on each other's nerves after a week, morning, noon, and night. And so we were getting ready to leave. And there was a terrible snowstorm out there, and we were late. We had to drive down the mountain to Denver Airport. And we were just crabby with each other because we were late and we were irritable. You ever get that way? Yeah. Oh, you're liars if you say. Anyway, we were coming down the mountain and we were still just a little irritable because we were late. We were under pressure. We got to the airport and pulled up there where you have about 30 seconds to unload everything. And there was nobody out there to help us, and the blizzard was awful, and it was icy cold. And I had all that stuff. I mean, we had 2 suitcases and skis and ski poles and parkas and ski boots, and you've been through that routine. And Shirley, this sweet lady, gets out of the car and goes into the airport. And she's there looking out the window at me. I'm freezing to death, and I'm out there, and I got all this stuff, and I'm late, and that irritated me. And the more I thought about it, the madder I got about it. So I bring it in. She was there inside the window, and I would bring it in, and I would set down a load at her feet, and I put it down hard so that she knew I was not happy, and I would go get another load. And I carried the whole load out there and brought it in, snow on my nose, my ears, my head. And I couldn't wait to tell her how I felt about that. So I turned around to her. I took in a big breath of air to let her know that I didn't think that was fair. And just as I did, I heard a little voice behind me. And I turned around, there's a little man there with his hand out. And he said, "Dr. Dobson, I want to meet the man who's taught me how to really love my wife." I choked it down, man. I mean, he never knew. I said, "Well, let me introduce you to my sweet wife." Have you ever done that? Well, anyway, I'm so glad you're here tonight, and what a pleasure. It's got a full house here. You do this every week? Oh, so it's not me. Well, as you heard, after I've said a few things, I would really like, the microphones will be made available, and I'd like to hear from you, because you sound like great people. While I was sitting down here, a lady came up and shook my hand. She heard me speak at Estes Park 46 years ago, and she remembers it. I can't even remember it. But that was an interesting day. But who knows who's here? I wish I had an opportunity to get acquainted with you all. And maybe we can touch bases with some of you before we're finished today. And I also want to introduce M.T. Tomlinson, who's our COO at Family Talk. And I hope you get acquainted with him. Dan Patterson is our head of security, so it's great to have them join us. Now, I want to ask you if you know, so are you aware that yesterday was the 44th anniversary of Roe v. Wade? 44 years have gone by since that decision. And there was not a celebration, but a memorial to that day in Washington, D.C. yesterday. And there were, I'm sure, more than 100,000 people there that were walking. They weren't protesting, and they weren't, breaking windows and setting cars on fire like some of the others have done the last week or two. But they were there to remember nearly 60 million babies that have died. And what I want to do today, and it may not be appropriate because some of you may have differing views, but I want to talk to you about life, because I care about children. I care about life. And God cares about children and about life. And I have spent most of my life writing about children and about parents. And I was at Children's Hospital as a professor of pediatrics for 14 years. And I have just done, I used to teach school before that. So most of my life has been given to children, and to especially, I love young children. And I want to talk about life tonight. I'm not going to get into arguments, and I'm not going to, drag us through the abortion thing and all of that, because that's not why we're here. But I do want to talk to you about the value of life, and that does involve the killing of babies. And I hope that you all will go with me, because it's the appropriate thing for this week, especially 2 days ago. And Shirley and I were in Washington, D.C. For the inauguration that just took place. And I was given an opportunity to pray for Mike Pence 2 hours before the inauguration. And I want to tell you, that is one godly man. And he spoke, yeah. He spoke at the event 2 days ago there at the Supreme Court about life. So that matters to him too. But I want to tell you, I haven't always been as clear as I am now about abortion and about life. I had a journey that I was on. And when I was in graduate school and working on a doctorate at the University of Southern California, I just didn't have that well thought out at all. That was a long, long time ago. And I had professors who were on the other side of the ledger. And they used to say things to me that had an impact on me. And I'm almost embarrassed to tell you about it today. But they would say to me, flat out racist things. This was the late 60s, and it was a different day. But these professors would say to me, you know, these kids that are born in the inner city, you know what they mean by that? They mean black kids are born in the inner city, and they don't have fathers. And their mothers are often on cocaine, and they're raised in gangs. And, you know, it would really be better if they had not been born. Can you believe they said that to the students, to me and others? And I would come home that night, and I would have dinner with my parents and Shirley, and I would say what they had said. I would repeat it. And my godly father, who was a beacon, moral beacon to me, would look at me, and his eyes would flood with tears. And the tears would run down his face like this. And he would say, no, 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 no. That's wrong. That's evil. Do not believe it. Every one of those children is a child of God. Don't you believe it? And so there was a period of time when I was weighing that, what I was hearing in school and what my parents and others were saying. And then in 1970, Shirley and I had one child, Danae, and we really wanted another one, and Shirley wasn't able to have any more, and we decided to adopt. And there was a young girl in a church near us. I have never met her to this day, but I love her because she was 17 and she got pregnant out of wedlock. We don't know the details. I just know that young girl carried that baby to term and put him in our arms, and that was Ryan. And we have two children, Danae and Ryan. And that changed my view of life a whole lot, because that girl could have gotten an abortion, and she didn't. She carried that baby to term. But still, the struggle went on, and I made some mistakes, one in particular. Shirley was at home one day without, I wasn't there, nobody else was there, and a knock came on the door. She went to the door, and there was a young girl there. Her name was Linda. I won't tell you her last name. And Linda said, "Hi, my name is Linda, and I'm selling Fuller brushes, and I wonder if you would like to let me show them to you." And Shirley said, "Honey, we really don't need any more brushes, and I'm really sorry." And she started to cry. And she said, "I know, nobody else does either." And she said, "I have a little boy, and he was born out of wedlock. His name is Joey, and he's a toddler, and I'm doing the best I can to take care of him and to earn enough money for us to live and to eat." And she just wept. And Shirley said, "Come on in." She brought her in, sat her on the couch, and heard her story about how she had gotten pregnant. And her heart went out to Linda, and mine did too. And when I came home that night, Shirley told me about Linda and about her financial need and her difficulty. And she and Shirley and I said, "Let's see what we can do to help." Shirley had gotten her address. She lived above a garage, a little 2-room place there. And we drove over there that night and went up the stairs, knocked on the door, and she invited us in. And we went and looked in the kitchen. There was nothing in the cabinet. They had eaten a can of SpaghettiOs that night. That's all they had to eat. And our hearts just broke for her. So we took her to a grocery store, and we bought a lot of staples and things for her, and brought them back, and became friends with Linda and invited her to our church, and she came and she got to know Jesus, and it was a very meaningful time. But then I was at Children's Hospital where I worked, and late in the afternoon, Linda came to see me. And she sat down and she said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm pregnant again." And I said, "Oh, Linda, why would you make that mistake again?" And she said, "I don't know, but I did." And she said, "This time I can't raise another child. I just can't raise. Joey's all I can handle, and I can't. I'm going to have to abort this child." I said, "Linda, please don't make that mistake." And I did everything I could to encourage her. I told her we would help her, and I'd find help for her. And she said, "I've made up my mind. That's what I'm going to do." And I said, "Then why are you here?" And she said, "Because I want you to," she said, "I don't have a car, and your hospital does not do abortions." And she said, "I would like you to take me to the hospital where they will." And I made one of the bigger mistakes of my life. She was desperate, destitute, and I transported her. I put her in my car, and I took her to that hospital and let her out. And the blood of that baby is on my hands, because I was a participant in the killing of that baby. You have to understand, this is how I see life. It's not a political issue to argue over. It's life. It's babies. You may remember Jessica McClure. Anybody here remember the name of Jessica McClure? Here's one, two. Anybody else? A few more. Jessica McClure was I think she was 2.5 years old. And she was toddling her through the backyard, and she fell into a well. And remember that? She went about, 15, 20 feet down, and then hit bottom. And it was so small that they couldn't get in there to get her out. and it became a national, international news story. And all around the world, there were cameras everywhere as they worked feverishly to get that baby out of there. And I think it went on for 2 days, maybe 3. And everybody was, pulling for that baby and praying for that baby and crying about that baby. And finally, the firemen and the rescuers drilled a hole next to the well and went down to where little Jessica was. And they then drilled over to her. And bless his heart, a fireman went down there. And he risked his life. And he came over to where Jessica was and got her in his arms and brought her up out of there. And when she came out of that well, it seemed like the whole nation cheered. Everybody was cheering for that baby. And she survived. I'd love to know where she is today. I would love to have her on my program, and I'd love to talk to her about what she remembers about that. She was dirty, she was smudged, and she had been injured and hurt when she fell in the hole, and they got her out of there. And everybody cheered. What's the hubbub? It was one child. Only one child. And everybody was pulling for her. Why do we not feel that way about every child who is sacrificed? I hope you can understand my heart here, that's the issue. What about a child, one child? Another story related to this. This is recent. Shirley and I know a family that has, where there's a grown daughter. And she has graduated from her training college and has become an intern at a hospital here in Colorado. And she told us that just recently there was a woman who came in and she had a baby, she was carrying a baby that had a hole in his heart. And the mother said, I cannot deal with this. I can't deal with this. We're going to abort this baby. And other people there tried to talk her out of it, but she said, no, I can't raise a child. Actually, you can fix a hole in the heart. It's done all the time. They've become very proficient with doing that. But she didn't want to deal with that, and she wanted to start over with a whole baby and not this baby. So she carried the baby to term, and the baby was delivered. And the physicians who were there acceded to the woman's wishes, and they put that baby in a laundry room, in a basket, and closed the door, and left that baby in there to suffer alone, without food or water, and died in there by herself, a tiny little baby. Have we gone crazy? Do we not understand the value of life? Now I want to say something to the women who are here, and they have to be here, who have had abortions. I'm not here to condemn you. There are circumstances that occur, and you perhaps were alone, scared, and some of you made that decision when you were 13 years of age. And God is the healer of all wounds and all sin. That is sin. But he will forgive. And we forgive you too. We're not here for that purpose tonight. But think hard about the value of a life. Let me read a scripture to you. Proverbs 31:8. Open your mouth for the speechless. Plead the case for us all. That's what I'm doing tonight on this Sanctity of Human Life week. And I thought it was appropriate that we do so. Let me tell you one other thing. Shirley and I were invited some years ago to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Have you ever seen that on television? This in the entertainment industry and in the news media is a big deal. There are 2,000 people that come. You would know of most of them. It's like the Oscars. It's at a huge hotel, and there's red carpet coming in, and there are cameras on both sides. When you walk in, it's a big deal. And the president always comes, and he says funny things, and the first lady usually speaks. And then they have the best comedians and others. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever seen that on television? Well, we got invited to it. ABC News invited us some years ago. And I was reluctant to go because I thought there might be a trap in it somewhere. Because I don't agree with those folks very much on a whole lot of things. And why did they ask me to be there? And they not only asked Shirley and me to come, but their table was right square in the middle, 2,000 people, right in the middle, and we were invited to be at their table. And some well-known reporters and commentators were there. So when I came in, I was looking around, I was wondering where the the assault might come from. And so we came in and we stood at the table. We were getting ready to sit down. And before I could sit down, Al Franklin came up. You know, is it Franken? Franken. That's it. He's now a senator. Well, he was a comedian for Saturday Night Live at that time. And before I sat down, he came up to me. And he didn't really greet himself. He said, hi, I'm Al Franken. I said, I know who you are. And he said, I want to ask you a question. And I said, okay, take a shot. And he said, what's it like? I said, what's what like? He said, what's it like to know everything about everything? What's it like to have all the answers for every question? And I said, oh, Al, it's a burden. You can't imagine how difficult it is. Think of that. I know it all. I mean, I know more than anybody else in the world. And here, I've got the opportunity to talk to you. I mean, it's just a very difficult thing. And it kind of took him back a little bit. And then he said, well, do you know that not everything is black and white? Some things are gray. And I said, Al, you're right again. Some things are gray. But there are other things that are black and white, black or white. And he said, well, not very many of them. And I said, well, let me ask you this. Let's suppose that you're a physician and you're standing, and I'm not a physician, you're behind a physician, that he's delivering a baby and you're behind him and you're watching this procedure. And the physician is performing what's called partial birth abortion, where the baby is taken or ripped from the mother's womb, sometimes with 5 minutes to go. In the last days of the gestation or the pregnancy. And you stand there and watch that. And pardon me, but we do need to know it. When that baby is almost out of the birth canal, the physician puts a cannula into the back of the baby's head and sucks the brains from that baby and delivers a dead baby. Would that be black or white? He said, well, yeah, that would be black. I said, it certainly would. And there's some things that are. And then I looked over to my right, and there were 3 photographers there with big cameras, all aimed at me. And I now know why I was there. And he left. And in about 20 minutes, he came back. He says, one more question I want to ask you. And I said, okay. He said, I know about your radio program. I know that it's heard on 7,000 stations around the world. And I know all that. But I want to know why you don't care about people who are hungry. You don't care about the needy. You don't care about those that are struggling. I said, Al, where do you get that? And he said, no, I know. That's not your emphasis. Your emphasis is on building families. And I said, that's really true. He said, so explain to me why you don't talk much about the people who are hungry. I said, Al, I don't know what you've been listening to, but we do. And we do put a lot of emphasis on that. And in fact, Katrina had just taken place, and we gave a couple of $100,000 to that. And the tsunami that occurred recently, we gave money to that. And I said, we do. But let me ask you something. Do you realize that poverty is caused primarily by broken families? And we're trying to go to the source to build those families so that we don't have the problem as much. Well, it went back and forth like that. And that was the end of that. Except that the next morning, Al Franken, whom I don't have a lot of respect for, quite obviously, he wrote every word of that. And it was in the MSNBC website the next morning. And to his credit, he reported every word of it correctly. So you do what you can in a world that does not share your values, and you win some and you lose some. But I tell you, there's some things happening in this country at this time that excites me. And don't mean that politically, but I mean I think there is a movement back in the direction of the values that we have been taught as a Christian. And we need to continue to pray about that. And that's what I came to say to you. A little short message. I hope it will be useful to you. Now, do we have microphones? Okay. You know, a lot of us have been fighting this pro-life issue for a long, long time. And there is a fatigue that comes with that. We've lost nearly every battle since 1973. I mean, you get tired of it. What's going on in the Supreme Court and the other courts, what's going on in the Congress, and a number of our presidents and vice presidents. But there's I think a turning point. We were on the edge of a cliff. There's a turning point now where some of the Christian values that we have believed in for so long are making a comeback, and I think that's good. Okay, Grim, I appreciated what you had to say about your experience with your first wife and the baby, and I thank you for having the courage to do what you did. And okay, does anybody have a question or comment about not only that, but anything you want to talk about? And if you don't want to talk about anything, we'll go home. Okay.